My parents stole my savings on my 18th birthday. 8 years later, they demanded my mansion for my sister. My 18th birthday fell on a gray, dull Tuesday in the suburbs of Ohio. There was no cake, no candles, no gifts wrapped in shiny paper. The only thing there was the same old dinner, a dry meatloaf my mother, Marta, had overcooked, and the sound of my father, Ramon, chewing with his mouth open. I'm Elena, and this is the story of how the worst day of my life became the beginning of my real life. We were sitting around the worn-out linoleum table, the one that had permanent marks from my father's construction boots. He cleaned his plate with a piece of bread and then let out a guttural belch that made the glasses vibrate. "Well," he said, wiping the grease on his work pants. "You're 18 now. You're an adult." I watched him cautiously. He had never used the word adult with me unless it was a prelude to something terrible. My younger sister, Beatrice, who was 15, didn't even look up from her phone, a new one that glowed under the yellowish kitchen light. Uncle Rogelio, my father's older brother, a man who had been living in our basement rent-free for 6 months, nodded in agreement as he served himself more mashed potatoes. "About time," he muttered. "Starting tomorrow," Ramon continued, "you start looking for a real job, and every penny you earn, every single check, goes straight into our bank account to pay for your 18 years of upkeep." The air left my lungs. I felt the heat rise up my neck. "But Dad, I had plans." My voice came out as a whisper, weak and pathetic. "I've been saving. I have almost $800. I was going to enroll in technical school next month to study business administration." Beatrice let out a small laugh. Marta, my mother, who had been silently scrubbing a pot, let out a dry, harsh laugh. "Studying? Have you looked at yourself? You barely graduated from high school. You think you're special? Your father and I have real jobs. It's time you learned what life costs." "But it's my money," I protested, feeling tears sting my eyes. "I saved it. That was 3 years of babysitting the neighbor's kids." "Exactly," Ramon interrupted, leaning across the table. His breath smelled of cheap beer. "And we gave you a roof and food while you were babysitting. So that money is ours." "No," I said, firmer this time. "You can't." "What can't we?" "What?" he growled. "Give me the card," Marta said, drying her hands on a dirty rag and holding out her palm. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "What?" "Your debit card. Where do you have that $800? Give it to me now, and give us the PIN. Consider it the first payment on everything you owe us." I looked at my father. He nodded. "Listen to your mother." I looked at Beatrice. She was recording with her phone, smirking. I looked at Uncle Rogelio. He shrugged. "Family supports each other, Elena. And right now, your parents need that money more than you need books." My hands were trembling. The money wasn't in the house, it was in the bank, in an account I had opened with the help of a school counselor. It was my only lifeline, my only way out of that suffocating house. "No," I repeated. Ramon stood up so fast his chair fell backward with a crash. In 2 steps, he was in front of me, his shadow covering me. "Don't make me repeat myself." Marta came up on the other side. "Either you give us the card and the PIN, or you get out of this house tonight." I froze. It was 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. It was cold. I had nowhere to go. Crying, I reached into the back pocket of my jeans and pulled out my wallet. I took out the pale blue card. I handed it to them. "The PIN," Marta demanded. I told her in a low voice. She nodded, satisfied. "See? That wasn't so hard. Now go wash the dishes." While I scrubbed the meatloaf grease, I heard Beatrice laughing in the living room. "Mom says we can go to the mall this weekend. I need those new shoes." That night, I lay on my twin bed in the room I shared with Beatriz and stared at the water stains on the ceiling. I had been robbed. My own family had stolen my only dream. And the worst part was, it wasn't over yet. The next few days were a psychological torture. Every morning, Marta would wake me up by banging on the door at 7 a.m., "Go look for a job, you lazy bum. That $800 won't last forever." I knew she was right. That $800, my safety cushion, was being used to buy Beatriz new clothes and video games. On Thursday, 2 days after my birthday, Beatriz came home with a pair of designer boots that cost, I know because I saw them in the store, at least $150. She pranced around our room, looking at me out of the corner of her eye. "Do you like them, Elena?" "They're real leather," she said, admiring her feet. "Mom said I deserved them for being a support to the family." I wanted to throw up. The room we shared was a microcosm of our family. Her side was filled with new posters, expensive makeup, a pristine white desk, and clothes overflowing from the closet. My side had a twin bed with sheets I'd used since middle school, a dresser missing 2 knobs, and a single poster of a kitten that said, "Hang in there." What an irony. I spent those days walking. I walked until blisters formed on the heels of my old shoes. Ohio, at that time of year, is gray and depressing, and my mood matched it perfectly. I handed out applications at every fast food restaurant, every clothing store, every supermarket within a 3-mile radius. "We're not hiring right now. We just filled the position. Leave your application, and we'll call you." Empty promises. I used the public library's computer to fill out online applications. 47 applications in 3 days. 47 implicit rejections. I would return home each evening, exhausted and smelling of desperation. And the house was worse than the street. Ramon would come home from work, drink 6 beers, and start yelling about the bills. Marta would glare at me every time I opened the refrigerator. "That food costs money, Elena. How much did you bring home today?" And Uncle Rogelio, always present on the couch, eating our leftovers, contributed nothing but opinions. In my day, he'd say, even though his days had ended 6 months ago when he was fired for stealing office supplies, at 18, I already had my own apartment and was supporting my mother. This generation is weak. I was walking 10 miles a day on an empty stomach while he watched TV. By Friday afternoon, the tension was palpable. It was Ramon's payday, which meant he'd be drunk by 6 p.m. I came in through the back door, trying to sneak to my room. "Where do you think you're going?" Ramon's voice boomed from the living room. I stopped. "To my room. I'm tired." "Tired? Tired of what?" "Spending money you don't earn." He got up from the sagging couch, a half-empty bottle of whiskey in his hand. Marta was standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed, an expression I knew all too well. It was her "I'm going to enjoy this" face. "Still no job, huh?" Ramon spat. "I've put in applications everywhere," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "Seriously, 47 places. Nobody's hiring right now, but some said maybe next week." "Excuses," he roared. "That's all you have. Excuses and laziness." "I'm not lazy," I yelled, my own frustration exploding. "I've walked for miles. I've filled out more applications than you can count. You people stole my money. The money I was going to use to get out of here." The silence that followed was heavy, dense. Then, the sharp sound of a slap echoed in the small living room. It wasn't Ramon, it was Marta. My mother's palm connected with my cheek with surprising force. My head snapped to the side, and the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. I had bitten my tongue. "Don't you dare," Marta hissed, her face inches from mine. "Don't you dare raise your voice in this house. We have fed you, clothed you, and kept a roof over your ungrateful head for 18 years, and this is how you repay us." By calling us thieves. But you did, I whispered, the pain of the slap mixing with the pain of betrayal. Ramon moved closer. The smell of alcohol was nauseating. Oh, yeah. You want to act like you're better than us. You want to act like you don't owe us anything. He laughed. A horrible, joyless laugh. Then you're going to see just how easy you've had it. What happened next was so fast my brain could barely process it. My father's hand, calloused and strong from years of construction, tangled in my hair. He pulled me toward the front door. I screamed. The pain was sharp, searing, blinding. My hands flew to my scalp, trying to relieve the pressure, but it was useless. Ramon, wait! Marta yelled. For a stupid second, I thought she was going to stop him. Her suitcase, she shouted. I'll get her suitcase. I heard her footsteps running up the stairs, thumps and bangs from my room. Ramon kicked the front door open, shoved me onto the concrete porch and then, with brutal force, threw me down the 3 steps. I landed hard on the driveway. The rough asphalt scraped the skin from my palms and knees. The cold night air hit my face, still burning from the slap. Marta appeared behind him. In her hands was my old cloth suitcase, the one I had used for church summer camps as a child. With surprising strength, she threw it. The suitcase flew over my head and landed in the middle of the street. The old, rusty zipper burst on impact. My cheap underwear, my 2 pairs of jeans, my worn-out t-shirts, and my one nice sweater spilled out onto the wet asphalt. Come back when you understand what you owe us. Ramon shouted. And don't come back before then, Marta added. The door slammed shut. I knelt there on the driveway, shivering from cold and shock. I looked up at the house. In the upstairs window, I saw a silhouette. It was Beatriz. She was illuminated by the screen of her laptop, and she was smiling. Smirking, actually, as if she were watching the season finale of her favorite show. In the living room window, Uncle Rogelio appeared. He shook his head as if he were disappointed in me. I could hear his muffled voice through the glass. That's how you learn about real life. Finally. The spring night was cold. I gathered my clothes from the street, stuffing them back into the broken suitcase with trembling hands. A car drove by and slowed down. The driver stared at me but didn't stop. My neighbor across the street, Mrs. Peterson, watched from her porch but offered no help. Another neighbor drew their curtains. I had lived on that street my entire life, and not a single person stepped forward. I had no phone, no money, only a broken suitcase and bloody knees. I walked. I walked to the library, the only place I could think to go. It closed at 9, and it was 8:45. I entered the public library, hoping the warmth would last a few minutes, but they were closing in 15. I hid in the last aisle, the biography section, and sat on the floor behind a bookshelf. That's when I broke down. Sobs racked my body, ugly and loud. Miss, are you all right? We're about to close. I looked up. It was Mrs. Morales, the head librarian, a kind, older woman who had helped me with school papers for years. Oh, my dear God, Elena, she said, her professional tone vanishing. What happened to your face? The red mark from my mother's hand was still burning. And then I told her everything. The birthday, the stolen money, the job search, the slap, being thrown into the street, my sister smiling. The words tumbled out between sobs. Mrs. Morales listened without interruption, her expression shifting from concern to horror, and finally to a cold, controlled anger. When I finished, she handed me a tissue. Wait here. She made a phone call, speaking in low, rapid Spanish. Then she hung up and turned to me. My daughter, Clara, lives alone. She works the night shift at the hospital. You can stay in her guest room temporarily. I can't, I have no money, I stammered. It's not charity, Mrs. Morales said firmly. Clara actually needs help with cleaning and cooking. You can help her with that in exchange for reduced rent, very reduced when you get a job. Clara's place was a modest one-bedroom apartment in a complex on the other side of town. Clara, 26, was practical, with a tired look in her eyes that I recognized as someone who works too much. She greeted me with a nod. Mom told me, she said bluntly. My parents kicked me out at 19. Different reasons, same result. It took me years to get this stable. I won't let you go through that alone. She turned her dining area into a space for me to sleep. There was a futon, a lamp, and some curtains for privacy. The rules are simple, Clara said that first night, handing me a cup of tea. Pay your share when you can, clean up after yourself, and don't bring drama into this house. I get enough of that at the hospital. I nodded. It seemed fair. That night, lying on the futon, which was surprisingly more comfortable than my bed at home, I felt strange. Clara had given me a set of clean sheets, a new toothbrush, and a towel. She hadn't asked for anything, hadn't insulted me, and it terrified me. I was so used to cruelty that kindness felt like a trap. What would she want in return? When would she turn on me? That first week, while Clara was on her night shift, I got up and went to the kitchen. I took the largest chef's knife from the wooden block. I took it back to the futon and hid it under my pillow. I slept like that for a week, with one hand on the handle of the knife, waiting for the door to burst open, waiting for the trap to spring, waiting for Clara to turn out just like Marta. She didn't. She didn't even notice. Or if she did, she never mentioned it. A week later, exhausted from paranoia and lack of sleep, I put the knife back in the kitchen. Kindness, it seemed, was sometimes just that. Kindness. It was a strange lesson to learn at 18. After a week of recovering and obsessively cleaning Clara's small apartment, she woke me up on a Monday at 5 a.m. I was already awake, of course, I barely slept. Get up, she said, sipping a coffee that smelled burnt. I know someone who needs a waitress at the diner on 5th Avenue. The owner's name is Luis. Tell him I sent you. I put on my one nice sweater, tied my hair back, and walked the 2 miles to the diner. Luis was a stout man in his 50s with a kind face and permanent coffee stains on his apron. He looked at my makeshift application, written on notebook paper. Then he looked at me. He sighed. Clara vouches for you, he said, his voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. Training starts now. You get minimum wage plus tips. Be on time. Work hard. Don't steal. That's all I ask. I nodded so fast I almost got dizzy. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Don't call me sir. Call me Luis. Now put on this apron. It smells like bacon. He was right. The job was brutal. 6 days a week, breakfast and lunch shifts. My feet constantly ached. I had minor burns on my arms from hot coffee. My back protested every time I lifted a heavy tray. But Luis was fair, and the regulars were mostly decent. I learned quickly. I learned how to carry 3 plates on one arm, to remember who took their coffee black and who took it with 2 sugars. There was one regular, an older man named Frank, who came in every morning at 6:15. He always sat in booth 3 and always ordered 2 eggs over easy with rye toast. You're different from the other girls who work here, Frank told me one morning, leaving a $20 bill for a $12 check. How so? I asked, surprised. You actually listen when people talk. Most servers have their head somewhere else. You're present. His words stuck with me. Be present. Pay attention. Remember details. My tip started to get better. One day, during the lunch rush, I was carrying a massive tray. It held 4 burgers, 4 sodas, and a bowl of hot soup. I was dodging a running child when I collided with another waitress. The tray tipped. Everything went crashing to the floor in slow motion. Sodas exploding, fries scattering, and the hot soup, oh God, the soup. The whole diner went silent. The child started crying. I froze. I was trembling. My first instinct was to look toward the kitchen, expecting Luis to come out screaming. I expected a slap. I expected to be grabbed by the hair and thrown into the street. I flinched, bracing for impact. Elena! Luis yelled from the kitchen. I squeezed my eyes shut. I heard his heavy footsteps approaching. Elena, are you okay? I opened one eye. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the mess on the floor. Yes, Luis. I'm so sorry. It's okay, he said, his voice calm. Accidents happen. Here. He handed me a rag and a dustpan. Clean it up, and tell the kitchen to remake the order for table 4. Quickly. I just stared at him. What? Are you going to clean this up or just stand there, he said, not with anger, but with impatience. I went to the employee restroom and cried for 5 minutes. I cried because the mess would cost money. I cried because I was embarrassed. But mostly, I cried because he hadn't yelled at me. I cried because his normal, sane reaction felt like the most extraordinary act of kindness in the world. That day, I learned the difference between a boss and a monster. Clara and I were like ships in the night. She would leave for her night shift as I came back from the diner, I would wake up as she was coming home to go to sleep. But on the weekends, we'd talk. She became more than a roommate. She became the big sister I'd needed my whole life. You still have nightmares, she told me one Saturday night, as we ate cheap pizza on the living room floor. Did I wake you? You don't scream in your sleep. You just whimper. Sometimes about your father. I felt ashamed. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Trauma doesn't just go away. It gets quieter, but it's always there. You just learn to live alongside it instead of letting it consume you. She was right. The nightmares persisted. I dreamt of Ramon's hand in my hair, the sound of my suitcase hitting the pavement, Beatrice's smirk. Clara encouraged me to go back to my original plan. You should take that class at the technical college, online. Just one at a time. How? I barely make enough to pay you for rent and food, I told her. The reduced rent was $300, plus $100 for utilities. My tips and wage barely covered it. Figure it out, she said, but not cruelly. You're smart, smarter than your parents ever let you believe. The words of Mrs. Watkins in high school echoed. The words of Frank at the diner, now Clara's. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't a useless idiot. The basic business administration class cost $400 plus books. I needed more money. The diner was on 5th Avenue, in an area with a lot of office buildings. I saw a sign in one of them, nightly cleaning staff needed. 8 p.m. to midnight. I applied. I got the job. My life became a scheduled hell. 4:30 a.m., wake up. 5:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., diner shift. 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., walk to the library. 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., study for my online class. 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., walk home, eat, sleep if I could. 7:30 p.m., walk to the cleaning job. 8 p.m. to midnight, clean offices. Mopping floors, emptying trash cans, scrubbing toilets. Midnight to 1 a.m., walk home. 1 a.m. to 4:30 a.m., sleep. I slept 4.5 hours a night if I was lucky. I lived on cheap coffee, adrenaline, and instant noodles. I was always exhausted. I had dark circles under my eyes that looked like bruises. But every Friday, when I deposited those 2 checks, the one from the diner, the one from cleaning. I watched my savings account grow. I paid for my tuition. I paid for my books. I paid Clara the full rent, without the discount. "Told you you'd figure it out," she said, smiling, when I gave her the extra money. I was too tired to smile back, but I nodded. The cleaning job was lonely and gross, but it was also quiet. It gave me time to think. As I scrubbed the sleek marble bathrooms of a law firm, I thought about the contrast. Here I was, cleaning the filth of people who probably made in an hour what I made in a week. I sat at a senior partner's desk one night. It was huge, mahogany. I saw his bank statements on the desk. I wasn't snooping, they were just lying there. The numbers made me catch my breath. I didn't feel envy. I felt curiosity. How? How do you get from cleaning the toilet to sitting at this desk? That's when I started stealing. No, not money, not objects. I started stealing knowledge. Luis, the diner owner's cousin, had a small catering business. Sometimes he needed servers for weekend events. The work paid $15 an hour in cash. I took every shift I could get. Weddings were great because drunk guests tipped well. But the corporate events, those were fascinating. I was serving tiny hors d'oeuvres at a cocktail party at a country club. The people there were different. They spoke a different way. They didn't talk about their neighbors, they talked about concepts. "Leverage is key," I heard a man in an expensive suit say. "The commercial real estate market is heating up," said another. "Asset diversification, interest rates, cash flow." They were words I'd heard in my business class, but here they were real, they were tools. To my parents, money was something that disappeared, something that caused fights and stress. To these people, money was a game, something that could work for you if you understood the rules. And I wanted to understand the rules. The library became my second home, well, my third home, after the diner. On my breaks between jobs, instead of sleeping, I read. I devoured Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read The Millionaire Next Door. I checked out books by authors with names like Susie Orman and Robert Kiyosaki. I'd read them during lulls at the diner. The concepts felt foreign at first, like learning a new language, but slowly, they started to make sense. Clara noticed the stack of books by my futon. Getting ambitious. Just trying to understand how people build wealth, I admitted. No one ever taught me this stuff. No one teaches anyone this stuff, Elena, Clara said, sitting down beside me. Not unless you're born into it. That's how they keep the system running. They keep people ignorant about money, and so they stay poor. Her words resonated deep inside me. Ignorance. That was the word. My parents had kept me ignorant, about everything. They convinced me I was stupid, that I was worthless, that my only value was the paycheck I could bring home. But I was learning that ignorance wasn't permanent. Knowledge was right there, for free, on the library shelves. You just had to be willing to work for it. And I was willing to work harder than anyone. I started a notebook. I tracked every dollar, every tip, every expense. My rent, the bus fare, food, tuition. I saw where my money was going, and I saw how much I needed to climb out of the hole. I quit the cleaning job. I paid for my second class, then my third. I realized my advantage wasn't my intelligence, it was my hunger. I was willing to sacrifice sleep, comfort, and a social life for a future I could barely imagine. I didn't know exactly what I was building, but I knew I was laying the foundation, brick by brick, shift by shift, book by book. And then a regular at the diner asked me a question that changed everything. There was a woman who came into the diner every Tuesday and Thursday, without fail, at 8:15 a.m. Her name was Veronica. Veronica was intimidating. She wasn't rude, but she was sharp, impeccable. She wore power suits that probably cost more than my year's rent. She carried a leather briefcase, and she always ordered the same thing, an egg white only omelette with spinach, no cheese, no onions, black coffee, and the Wall Street Journal. She occupied booth 5, the one in the corner, and she worked while she ate. The first time I served her, I made the mistake of trying to be friendly. "How are you today? Ready for the usual?" She looked up from her paper, her sharp eyes assessing me over her reading glasses. "The usual. And do not interrupt me again." Ouch. But I remembered Frank's words. Be present. So I watched her. I learned that even though she said, "Do not interrupt me," she got annoyed if her coffee cup ever reached half empty. I learned that she liked her check on the table at exactly 8:45, but not a minute before. I learned she hated parsley, even as a garnish. So I made sure her cup was always silently refilled. I had the kitchen leave the parsley off her omelette before it even came out. I put the check on her table at 8:45 on the dot. For 3 months, I served her like this, silently, efficiently. She never said thank you, but she started leaving 100% tips. A $10 bill for a $10 check. One Tuesday, as I put the check on her table, she didn't go back to her paper. She just stared at me. "What's your name?" she asked. "Elena, ma'am." "Elena, I've been watching you." My heart lurched. Watching me? Was she going to complain about something? "You're the only waitress in here who understands the difference between service and annoyance," she said. "You're observant, you remember details, and you're polite even when customers are rude. I saw how you handled that man last week who yelled at you about the cold soup." I blushed, remembering the man. "Have you ever thought about sales, Elena?" "Sales? No, ma'am. I just serve coffee." She let out a short laugh. "Honey, everything in life is sales. I run a real estate company. Hoffman Properties. I need someone to handle incoming calls, schedule showings, and manage paperwork. It's an entry-level position, but it pays $18 an hour plus bonuses." My jaw dropped. $18 an hour. That was more than double what I made at the diner. "Why? Why me?" "Because I saw your notebook," she said, gesturing to the small notepad in my apron pocket. "I've watched you take notes on the regulars' orders. Last Monday, I overheard Mr. Henderson in booth 2 complaining that his wife's birthday was coming up. On Tuesday, I heard you suggest he get her a gift card for the diner. He did. That, Elena, is not serving coffee. That's anticipating a customer's need and selling them a solution." I was stunned. She was right. "I don't know anything about real estate, ma'am. Call me Veronica. And I don't care. I can teach you real estate. I can't teach you to be hungry, to pay attention, and to shut up when necessary. Those are skills. Instinct." She handed me her card. "My office is 3 blocks away. You start on Monday. Don't be late." She stood up, left a $50 bill on the table, and walked out. I gave Luis my 2 weeks' notice that afternoon. He smiled. "I knew you wouldn't be here forever. You're too smart to smell like grease for the rest of your life." I was sad to leave him, but it was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. The seed I'd planted in the library was about to sprout. We're right in the middle of Elena's story. If you're feeling her struggle and her determination as much as I am, please take a second to hit the like button on this video. It helps out a ton. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the second half of this incredible story. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below with your city or country name. Every comment helps this story reach more people. Thanks so much for your support, and now, let's get back to Elena's rise. The office of Hoffman Properties was in a converted old house on Maple Street. It smelled of polished wood and old money. Veronica was not an easy boss. She was not a nurturing mentor. She was a general, and I was her newest recruit. I'm not here to be your friend, Elena, she told me on the first day, as she showed me my small desk in what used to be a dining room. I'm here to make money, and you're here to help me do it. Learn fast. Don't ask stupid questions. And anticipate my needs. I nodded. Yes, Veronica. The job was overwhelming. The phone rang non-stop. Clients had questions I couldn't answer. The paperwork seemed designed to be confusing. And then there was Gabriel. Gabriel was the office's star agent. He was charming to clients but a shark in the office. He was territorial, and he saw me as a threat from day one or worse, a pet project. So you're the waitress, he said, leaning on my desk with a condescending smirk. Veronica picked you up out of the gutter, huh? Cute. I ignored him. Veronica was tough but fair. She taught me everything: how to read a contract, how to talk to an angry client, how to negotiate. My first big test came 3 weeks in. Veronica handed me a stack of files 3 feet high. They were the closing files from the last 5 years. They were in absolute disarray. I can't find anything, she said, her voice sharp. Gabriel says he's been too busy to organize them. You have until the end of the day. End of the day was a week's worth of work. I glanced at Gabriel. He smiled at me. A fake smile. Good luck, waitress. I knew it was a test, and I knew he'd probably messed them up on purpose. That night, I didn't go home. I told Clara I was covering a double shift. I stayed at the office all night. I drank burnt coffee from the office machine. I didn't just organize the files, I analyzed them. I created a new system. I color-coded by property type: residential, commercial. I created an Excel database using my online class skills that tracked sale prices, commissions, and agents. At 7 a.m. the next morning, when Veronica walked in, I was at my desk, red-eyed but surrounded by a perfectly organized system. She looked at the shelves, then at the database on my screen. I did an analysis, I said, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. I noticed our commercial property sales are down 15% in the last 2 years, but commissions on luxury residential properties are up. Gabriel is focusing on the big houses, but we're losing the commercial market. Veronica stared at me. She didn't say anything for a full minute. Then she gave a single nod. Not bad, Elena. Not bad at all. She turned to Gabriel, who had just walked in. Gabriel, Elena just did a year's worth of your work in one night. Maybe you should start taking notes from the waitress. The look Gabriel gave me could have burned the building down. I had won the battle, but he had just declared war, and I, stupidly, was not prepared for what came next. 6 months passed. I became a sponge. I absorbed everything. Veronica saw my hunger, as she called it. One day, she sat me down. Elena, you're wasted answering phones. You should get your real estate license. Veronica, I can't afford the course. I'll pay for the course and the exam fees, she cut me off. You can pay me back out of your first commission. I was stunned. Why would you do that? Because I see what you can become, she said, almost gently. Gabriel coasts on his old contacts. The other agents are competent but not ambitious. You have the drive to be exceptional. This is an investment, in both of us. I studied like a maniac, in every spare moment. Clara would quiz me over dinner before her shifts. Luis let me use the back room at the diner. 10 months after starting at Hoffman Properties, I passed my license exam on the first try. Gabriel muttered, beginner's luck. But my first year as a licensed agent was a disaster. I didn't understand the emotional part of the job. I was good with numbers but terrible with people. My first big client was an investor, a man named Mr. Patterson. He was loud, boorish, and reminded me unbearably of my father, Ramon. We were in a negotiation for a small apartment building. The seller was being difficult. Patterson was getting frustrated. "Why aren't you pushing harder?" he yelled at me in the hallway. I told them my offer was final. "Do your damn job, girl." His voice boomed, and suddenly, I wasn't in an office building in 2011. I was in my living room in 2008. My cheek was stinging. I could smell the cheap beer on his breath. The walls started closing in. The sound became distorted. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stammered. "What, cat got your tongue?" I couldn't breathe. I turned, ran to the women's restroom, and threw up in the sink. I had a full-blown panic attack. I lost the deal. Patterson called Veronica and told her I was an incompetent amateur and he'd never work with us again. I sat in Veronica's office that afternoon, feeling like I was 18 again. Useless. Broken. "What happened?" Veronica asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I told her. The truth about my father, about the yelling, about the panic. I expected her to fire me. I expected her to scream. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and just looked at me for a long time. "All right," she said finally. "All right? I just lost you a $500,000 deal. The deal doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter. There are more deals. What matters is what you do now. You have two choices, Elena. You either let that bastard your father win. You let him control your reactions for the rest of your life. Or, you get back out there, and you use it." "Use it? How?" "That fear," she said. "That rage. The next time a man yells at you, I want you to remember how that felt. And then I want you to take that emotion, put it in a box, and you sell him the house. If you're going to cry, you do it on your own time. In my office, you make money." It was the hardest and best advice I have ever received. I almost quit that day, but I didn't. It had taken too much to get here. I wasn't going to let Ramon take this from me, too. I also realized Veronica was right, but also that I needed to change my strategy. I couldn't handle the Ramones of the world. Not yet. They were my kryptonite. But what about people like me? Instead of chasing the big investors like Gabriel did, I focused on first-time homebuyers. The people who were terrified, the people who'd been told they could never own a home, the people who felt as small and intimidated by the process as I had felt in that bathroom. My first real client was named Lucia. She was a single mother working 2 jobs, just like I had been. She had terrible credit and a tiny down payment. Other agents wouldn't even return her calls. I spent weeks with her. I researched first-time buyer assistance programs, city grants nobody knew about. I called every lender in town until I found one willing to take a chance on her. When we finally closed on her little 2-bedroom house, Lucia cried in my arms at the closing office. "You didn't give up on me," she sobbed. "Everyone else gave up." That's when I understood. This was my edge. My second client was Andres, a young veteran back from deployment with PTSD and medical debt. The VA loan process was a bureaucratic nightmare. Andres was overwhelmed by the paperwork. I drove to his apartment 3 times to help him fill out forms. I called the VA office so many times they recognized my voice. The house was a modest $110,000 ranch. My commission was small, but Andres's gratitude, the way he looked at his new backyard and said, "I can breathe here," made every hour worth it. Lucia told her coworker about me. Andres gave my card to his therapist. My business wasn't built on billboards. It was built word of mouth in the trenches, with the people the rest of the real estate world considered too much trouble. My second year as a licensed agent, I sold 17 properties. My third year, I sold 41. At the company awards banquet that year, Gabriel won the award for the highest commission. I won the award for the most transactions. Veronica handed me the plaque. I knew you would, she whispered. Gabriel stopped making snide remarks after I outsold him 2 quarters in a row. He started actively avoiding me. And I started making money. Real money, more money than I had ever imagined. My commissions my second year totaled almost $68,000. The third year, I cleared 6 figures. The first thing I did was move out of Clara's apartment. Not because I didn't love her, but because for the first time, I could afford my own space. I found a small studio, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I bought my first car, a used Honda Civic with 140,000 miles, that ran perfectly. I gave Clara a check for every cent of reduced rent she had saved me, plus interest. She cried. You don't have to do this. You saved my life, Clara, I told her. Let me do this. She took the money but immediately spent it on furniture for my new studio. You need a real bed, she insisted, showing up with a delivery truck. She was my family. With my growing confidence and a savings cushion, I decided to try something I'd learned about in my books, flipping. Buy low, fix up, sell high. I bought my first property at 24, a small, foreclosed condo that needed a complete gut job. It smelled of cats and sadness. I lived in it for 6 months while I renovated it on weekends. I learned how to install laminate flooring from YouTube videos. I learned how to tile a backsplash. My hands, which used to be soft from office work, became calloused and strong. I sold that condo for a $30,000 profit. I immediately rolled that money into another foreclosure. This one was a disaster. Holes in the walls, stained carpets. I fixed it up and sold it for a $60,000 profit. This was how wealth was built, not in one lucky break, but through repeated smart decisions, hard work, and calculated risks. I was in the middle of my third flip, a house that was a real challenge. I was at Home Depot on a Saturday morning, covered in drywall dust and paint. I was in the checkout line, mentally debating whether I needed 1 inch or 1 1/4 inch drywall screws. Next, a tired, familiar voice called out. I looked up. The world stopped. It was Beatrice. She was working as a cashier at Home Depot. She was 21. Her orange uniform was stained. Her hair, which had always been her pride, was dyed a cheap, brassy blonde and pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her expression was bitter, bored. She recognized me at the same time. Her eyes widened, then narrowed with the same old disdain. Well, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Look who it is. The real estate queen. Or should I say, construction queen. She looked me up and down. My paint-splattered clothes, my hair under a baseball cap. I see things didn't quite work out. Dad was right. He always said you were only good for manual labor. I stood there in line, with my cart full of building supplies. The people behind me were getting impatient. The 18-year-old Elena would have cried. The 21-year-old Elena would have fought back, yelling about her commissions and success. But the 24-year-old Elena, covered in drywall dust, was tired. And for the first time, I realized something incredible. I didn't care anymore. Her opinion held no weight. It was like the buzz of a mosquito, annoying, but irrelevant. I looked at her calmly. I looked at her name tag, which read, Beatrice. I looked at the long line of customers behind me. I put my items on the conveyor belt. She scanned them grudgingly. That'll be $247.50, she muttered. I pulled out my business debit card, paid. As I waited for the receipt, I looked her directly in the eye. Not with anger, not with pity, just with nothing. Have a good shift, Beatrice, I said. I took my things and walked out of the store. As I pushed the cart to my used Honda Civic, I realized I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I was free. They had no more power over me. When I turned 25, Veronica called me into her office. There was a lawyer with her. My heart stopped. I was in trouble. Elena, Veronica, now 62, began. I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm tired. You're retiring? I asked, worried. Almost. I want to travel. I want to see my grandkids. But I can't do that if I don't know the business is in good hands. She slid a folder across the desk. I'm offering you 30% of the company as a partner. Now. With an option to buy another 20% in the next 5 years. Eventually, if things work out, you'll buy me out completely. My hands trembled as I read the documents. 30% of Hoffman Properties was worth a lot. I can't afford to pay you $150,000 for this, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Why not? She asked, arching an eyebrow. You have equity in the properties you're flipping. You have excellent credit. The banks will lend you the money. Besides, I'm willing to finance some of it myself. Elena, you've earned this. I'm not giving you a handout. I'm making a smart business decision. You're my best investment. My first reaction, my 18-year-old instinct, was to say, why? Is this pity? But the 25-year-old Elena, the person who had closed 41 deals the year before, took a deep breath. My lawyers will review this, I said, my voice firm. Veronica smiled. That's my girl. I invested everything I had. We expanded, hired 4 more agents. We opened a second office. Veronica handled the back end while I managed sales and training. The business exploded. I was 26. I was managing 8 agents in 2 offices and had just cleared $320,000 in annual income. Mrs. Morales invited me to give a talk at the library on financial literacy, the same place where I had arrived crying and homeless. I spoke to 40 people about building wealth without a college degree. And with that money, I decided to build something no one could ever take away from me. I bought a piece of land on the edge of town, in a new developing area. I worked with an architect. I want light, I told him. Huge windows. I want a kitchen where I can cook for all my friends, and I want an office with floor-to-ceiling built-in bookshelves. For 8 months, I watched my house being built. My dream. It wasn't just a house, it was a statement. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen with a quartz island, an office with French doors. The house cost $480,000 to build. Comparable homes in the area were selling for $700,000. The night I moved in, I didn't unpack. I just sat on the oak hardwood floor of my empty living room and cried. I cried for the 18-year-old girl with the bloody knees. I cried for the 20-year-old who scrubbed toilets at midnight. A week later, I threw a housewarming party. Clara came, now married to a wonderful guy named David. Louise from the diner came, bringing enough meatloaf to feed an army. Mrs. Morales came, telling anyone who would listen about her Elena. And Veronica came, handing me a bottle of wine that cost more than my first car. Well done, partner, she said, raising her glass. I was surrounded by my family. My real family. The family I had chosen. I was home. But of course, it couldn't last. Ghosts, it turns out, know how to find your new address. It had been exactly 2 weeks since the housewarming party. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in my glorious new backyard, trying to decide where to plant hydrangeas. The doorbell rang. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. Clara and David were away for the weekend. Veronica was playing golf. I walked through my new foyer, my bare feet on the cool wood. I looked through the peephole, and my heart stopped. The breath rushed out of me. I took a step back. My hand flew to my mouth. It was them. Ramon, Marta, Beatriz, and, of course, Uncle Rogelio. They were all there, on my stone porch, looking at my solid wood door. How? How had they found me? I froze. My instinct was to run, to hide, to pretend I wasn't home. But then anger replaced the fear, a cold, slow-burning anger. This was my house. I paid for this porch. I was not going to hide in my own home. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders. A lesson from Veronica, never let them see your fear, and I opened the door. They looked small. Older, yes, but mostly small. Worn. Ramon had more gray in his hair and a bigger beer gut. Marta looked haggard, the lines of bitterness around her mouth deeper. Uncle Rogelio looked the same, just in more worn-out clothes. And Beatriz, now 23, looked exactly as she had at 15, still wearing that same expression of smug boredom, though she was now trying to hide her awe as she looked over my shoulder into my house. "Hello, Elena," Marta said, her voice trying for sweet and motherly. It was a false sound, like an out-of-tune instrument. "What a beautiful home. We always knew you'd make it. We're so proud of you." Proud. The word sounded like an obscenity. "What do you want?" I said. My voice was flat. Emotionless. Marta's smile faltered. "Elena, honey, aren't you going to invite your family in? We've come a long way." I answered your question. Now you answer mine. "What do you want?" "We just want to talk," Ramon cut in, trying for paternal. "Reconnect. It's been a long time." 8 years, I said. "Yes, I know. I was counting." "Come on, Skinny," Beatriz said, pushing past me. "I'd love to see the house. I hear it's a mansion." I put my hand on her chest, stopping her. Not hard, but firmly. "First, you answer me. How did you find me?" "We asked Mrs. Morales at the library," Marta said, too quickly. "Such a nice woman. She was so happy to give us your new address." A lie. Mrs. Morales would call me before giving my address to the president himself. They had likely followed me from work or looked up public records. They were hunters. Curiosity won out over my caution. I wanted to know. I wanted to know the purpose of this charade. I stepped back. "You have 10 minutes. They came inside, and their masks fell. They didn't see a home, they saw money. I saw their eyes scan the 2-story foyer, the modern chandelier, the oak floors. I saw Beatriz touch my reclaimed wood console table as if checking if it was genuine. I saw Uncle Rogelio stare into the living room, wide-eyed. "My God," Ramon muttered. "What did this place cost you?" "That's none of your business," I said, crossing my arms. "Must be nice," Marta said, her voice losing all its sweetness, turning sharp. "Living here in luxury, while your family struggles." Ah, there it was. The real reason. "Get to the point," I said. "You have 8 minutes left." Beatriz flopped onto my white linen sofa, the one that had taken me 3 months of savings as if she owned it. She put her dirty boots up on the fabric. "I just turned 23, she announced to the room, examining her nails nonchalantly. "Mom and Dad think it's time for me to start my adult life, you know, the right way. With a good start." My stomach turned. I knew, with a nauseating clarity, exactly where this was going. Marta leaned forward, her eyes glittering with eager greed. "You see, Elena, things haven't been going well. Your father hurt his back, can't work much. And Uncle Rogelio, well, he's had some bad luck. And I'm stuck in a dead-end job at Home Depot," Beatriz added from the couch. "And you, honey, you've done so well," Marta continued, her voice turning syrupy again. "You have this mansion, and we hear you own half of that real estate company, too. What do you want, Marta?" I repeated, my voice dropping a degree. "Your sister needs a leg up," she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes on command. She was always good at that. Do you really want her to struggle the way you did? Beatriz is an adult, I said. She can make her own choices, get her own jobs, build her own life, just like I had to. But it's not fair. Beatriz cried from the couch. You got lucky. Some rich old lady handed everything to you. Ramon nodded. You owe us. You owe us for 18 years of food and shelter and clothes. It's time to pay that debt. And then Marta dropped the bomb. You see, Elena, she said, trying to sound reasonable. The other day we were thinking. Remember that $800 we borrowed from you when you turned 18? You stole it from me. Nonsense. It was an investment, Ramon said. We took that money and invested it in Beatriz, in her future. And now? And now, Marta said, smiling as if she were offering me a gift, it's time for you to pay the interest on that investment. Your sister Beatriz deserves a good start, and you have this huge house. It's too big for you, all alone. I just stared at her, unable to process the sheer scale of the audacity. What? What are you saying? I asked. It's simple, Beatriz said, getting up from the couch. You give us the house. Or the company. Or both. But the house would be a good start. I like the kitchen. Mom, Dad, and Uncle Rogelio can move in with me. You can get an apartment. You know how to live in apartments, right? Family takes care of family, Uncle Rogelio grunted, nodding. You're being selfish. And if you don't, Ramon added, taking a menacing step toward me, well, it'll be a repeat of last time. We'll cut you off completely. You'll never hear from us again. We will disown you. The threat. The big one. That they would leave me alone. The very threat that had terrified me at 18. They all looked at me, waiting. Waiting for me to crumble, waiting for me to cry, to beg, to hand them the keys. And then something unexpected happened. I laughed. It wasn't a chuckle. It was a full, deep, loud, slightly hysterical laugh that came from the very core of my being. I laughed so hard I had to hold my stomach. I laughed until tears streamed down my cheeks. They stared at me like I had gone insane. What's so funny? Marta snapped, her face contorting with rage. I took a deep breath, wiping the tears of laughter away. You, I said, my voice now ice cold. You are what's funny. Disown me? That's your threat? To leave me alone? I pulled out my phone. Who are you calling? Ramon demanded. I hit Veronica's speed dial. She answered on the second ring. Elena, she said. Hi, Veronica, I said, my voice calm and professional. I'm fine. I just need you to document something for me. I'm at my home. I have 4 individuals here: Ramon, Marta, Beatriz, and Rogelio. They are threatening me and demanding I sign over my assets, specifically my house, under the threat of a repeat of last time. Can you record this call as a witness? There was a brief pause. Recording now, Veronica confirmed, her tone instantly businesslike. I've activated the legal transcription. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the coffee table. The faces of my family changed. The color drained from Marta's face. Ramon clenched his fists. Please, I said, smiling sweetly. Repeat what you just said about taking my house as interest for the $800 you stole 8 years ago. Are you recording us? Marta hissed. Your own parents. You just threatened and attempted to extort me in my own home. That's a felony. Veronica, did you hear that clearly? Crystal clear, Elena. I'm documenting everything. This is insane. Beatriz yelled. We're family. You stopped being my family the moment you threw me on the street and smiled while you did it, I said, my voice sharp. You are trespassing, and you are now committing extortion. You ungrateful little Uncle Rogelio started, moving toward me aggressively. Stop, I commanded. I pointed to the small dome camera in the corner of the ceiling, one I had installed as part of my state-of-the-art security system. Smile. You're being recorded on video and audio. Every word, every movement is being backed up to the cloud. If you touch me, Rogelio, you will be charged with assault. And trust me, I have better lawyers than you do. Rogelio froze. We gave you everything, my mother shrieked, having completely lost her composure. You gave me nothing, I shot back. Nothing but trauma and debt. I built this life from nothing. I built this life sleeping on a futon in someone's dining room with a kitchen knife under my pillow because I was too scared to trust kindness. I built this life working 2 jobs, cleaning other people's toilets at midnight, and studying until 3 a.m. You contributed not a single dollar, not a single word of encouragement, not a single moment of support. Ramon tried a different tactic. Elena, honey, we made mistakes. We were under a lot of financial pressure. No. Don't you dare try to rewrite history now. You weren't under pressure. You were cruel. You enjoyed having power over someone weaker. And the second I couldn't be controlled, you threw me away. But your sister needs you, Marta pleaded. My sister is a 23-year-old adult living with her parents and blaming the world for her problems. She can do what I did, get a job. Or 2. Or she can continue to be enabled by you, watch you coddle her, and end up exactly like Uncle Rogelio, living in someone's basement with nothing to show for her life. Watch your mouth, Rogelio yelled. No, Ramon said, his face red with rage. We're not leaving until you agree to help your sister. I picked up my phone. Veronica, still on the line. I'm calling the police now. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Hello. I have 4 individuals in my home at my address who are refusing to leave after I have repeatedly asked them to. They have made threats, and they are now trespassing. That got them moving. Are you crazy? Marta shrieked, grabbing Beatrice's arm and pulling her toward the door. You'll regret this. Family is forever, Ramon pointed at me. You'll need us one day. I stood in the foyer of my house and watched them stumble over each other to get out. 8 years, I said quietly as they went out the door. I haven't needed you for 8 years. I'll be fine for the next 60. They were gone. Ramon slammed the door so hard a picture on the wall rattled. I watched through the window as they piled into their old, rusty car, arguing among themselves before driving off. Elena? Veronica's voice came from my phone. Are you okay? I took a shaky breath. Yes, Veronica. I'm okay. I hung up. I sat down on my beautiful white linen sofa, and for the second time in that house, I cried. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. It was over. It was really over. Clara came over an hour later. I'd forgotten we had plans. I told her everything. She brought wine and Thai food. I am so proud of you, she said, raising her glass. You stood your ground. You didn't let them manipulate you. They really thought I would just hand it all over, I said, still in disbelief. Like I owed it to them for a basic upbringing. They didn't even do that, Clara said. A basic upbringing involves love, support, encouragement. They provided shelter and food, the legal minimum, and then acted like you should be eternally grateful. Over the next few weeks, I got voicemails from my mother. They started out apologetic, claiming they'd just approached things wrong. When I didn't respond, the messages turned hostile. I was selfish, heartless, a terrible daughter. I blocked their numbers. Beatrice found me on social media, sending long rants about how I was destroying the family, how mom was crying every day, how they were struggling financially and it was my fault. She complained that at 23, she had nothing, while I had everything. I blocked her. Uncle Rogelio somehow got my work email and sent an incoherent screed about family obligations. I marked it as spam. 3 months later, I got a letter from a lawyer. My parents were suing me for elder financial abuse and withholding support. Veronica laughed so hard I thought she'd have a stroke. The case was ludicrous and was immediately thrown out. The judge even admonished their lawyer for wasting the court's time. That was the last I ever heard from them. Occasionally, I hear through mutual acquaintances that they're telling people I abandoned them, that I was rich and refused to help my struggling family. I don't bother correcting the stories. The people who matter know the truth. Veronica and I expanded Hoffman Properties to 3 more cities. By the time I was 28, my share of the company was worth roughly $1.8 million. My house had appreciated. I had investments, savings, security. Clara and David got married. I was the maid of honor at their wedding. Mrs. Morales attended, telling anyone who would listen about her Elena. Luis from the diner brought his entire staff. That was my family. Sometimes I drive through my old neighborhood. My parents' house looks worse every year. The siding is peeling. The lawn is overgrown. I heard Beatriz still lives there. She never went to college. She still works in retail, waiting for someone to hand her the life she thinks she deserves. I don't feel satisfaction watching their decline. I don't feel vindication. I don't feel anything. And that is exactly as it should be. They are strangers who share some of my DNA, nothing more. Last month, I donated $50,000 to a local charity that helps teenagers who have been kicked out of their homes by their families, the very situation I was in. I thought of my 18-year-old self, walking down the street with a broken suitcase, with nowhere to go, believing I was worthless. My parents wanted me to understand real life. They were right about one thing. I learned that family isn't biology, it's chosen. I learned that the people who truly love you want to see you succeed, not watch you fail. And I learned the most important lesson of all, the best revenge is not revenge. It's living well, surrounding yourself with people who genuinely care about you, and refusing to allow anyone who has ever hurt you to take up any more space in your life. They thought they were teaching me about real life. Instead, they taught me exactly who I never wanted to become. And for that, in a strange way, I'm almost grateful. It's been years, and I never spoke to them again. Sometimes I wonder, did I do the right thing by cutting off all contact forever, or was I too harsh? Let me know what you think in the comments. What would you do in my situation? Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more family dramas, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Your support means the world to us.